Welcome into the Steel Curtain Podcast. It's Monday, September 23rd, and the Pittsburgh Steelers are 3-0 after beating the LA Chargers 20-10 in week 3 of the 2024 NFL season at that stadium that used to be named after a ketchup bottle. I'm Josh Yourish, and today I'm going to react to week 3, tell you why I finally have hope in Arthur Smith, break down the Steelers' continued mishandling of first-round picks, and get into just how long this win streak can continue. But first, I have to talk about Justin Fields. Justin Fields may not be the long-term answer, but he's the future for now. He's the best answer this season. Justin Fields is the Steelers' starting quarterback, and he should be the Steelers' starting quarterback as long as he's healthy. We haven't seen Russell Wilson after yesterday. We don't need to see Russell Wilson unless things start to go really south for Justin Fields, because that was an incredible performance considering what we know about Fields, right? Considering the baggage that we had from seeing him play in Chicago, I never thought we'd see a performance like we did in week 3 from Justin Fields. And I'll try not to be hyperbolic because I don't think he looked like the best quarterback in the NFL. I just think he looked like a drastically improved quarterback in the areas he needed to improve in the most. So Fields is playing like a pocket passer. That's not the rap on Justin Fields. He's taking care of the football. That's not the rap on Justin Fields. He's accurate on short passes. That has never been what Justin Fields is best at. He's doing everything he never did in Chicago, and if you can win that way, you'll get the chance to take more deep shots. You'll get the chance to run the ball more, create more out of structure if you earn the trust of the play caller and the head coach by operating within the structure of the offense. And Justin Fields is doing that. He's mitigating negative plays. He did have an interception yesterday, but it was an accurate throw. He's a little bit late on it. It was popped up. Weird play. He's taking care of the football. 1 turnover through 3 weeks. And it was a bit fluky. And yesterday, they gave him the opportunity to actually make plays because the running game was not working at all. The running game has not been working at all. So Arthur Smith said, all right, Justin Fields, you're going against Justin Herbert, granted a limited Justin Herbert. You're going against an LA Chargers defense that's looked pretty good through the first 2 weeks of the season. Granted, Joey Bosa went down in the first quarter. Go win us a football game. And Justin Fields won the Steelers a football game. He went 25 for 32, 245, a touchdown and an interception, had 6 carries for 6 yards and another score. That was the first touchdown of the game for the Steelers. Only a 5.5-yard average depth of target. Like I said, he was not pushing the ball down the field. This was not the big explosive plays that you expect with Justin Fields that also come with the baggage of the negative plays. This was precision. And the stat that best illustrates that is that Fields had a 10.6% completion percentage over expectation. That's an NFL Next Gen stat that shows, how accurate you are and how effective you are as a passer relative to the amount of wide open guys you have, the types of throws you're being asked to make, the expected completion percentage. And that's calculated in a variety of ways. That was the best in the NFL in week 3. He also had a 2.72 second time to throw, which was his quickest of the season. I want to say best of the season because that's an area he needs to work on. Being under 3 seconds time to throw for Justin Fields is not something that's happened often in his career. And it happened in week 3. Well under. And very good and efficient with it. Against pressure this year. Maybe the most exciting thing that we've seen from Fields is that he's operating when things aren't perfect. He's still keeping his eyes downfield. He's not just tucking in and running. That was what Justin Fields was in Chicago. If there was pressure, and there was a lot of pressure in Chicago, there was also a good amount of pressure yesterday, he'd tuck in and run. Not anymore. Fields is getting the ball out quickly. Against pressure, this is for the season. This is not yesterday. He's 10 for 17. That's a 58.8% completion percentage, 7 yards per attempt, and a league best 91.7 adjusted completion percentage per Pro Football Focus. So that's how accurate you are relative to, things like drops, and those affect your completion percentage. If you adjust it for just, accurate catchable passes, he's at 91.7% against pressure. Versus the blitz, Fields 18 of 25 for the season, 72% completion percentage. That's 8th best in the NFL. 191 yards and 2 touchdowns, 7.6 yards per attempt. That's 15th best in the league. 3.6 average depth of target. So when teams are blitzing, when teams are getting pressure, Fields is getting the ball out quickly, short. He's finding his checkdowns. He's not relying on his legs. He's getting the ball out of his hands. He's not creating negatives. That is what Justin Fields needed to do. Now, if this was another quarterback, maybe I would criticize them for being a checkdown artist. Maybe I'd criticize them for having a 5.5 yard average depth of target in week 3. But with the way the Chargers were playing, they lived in 2 high safeties. They dared the Steelers to run them out of it. The Steelers could not run the ball. So the Chargers and defensive coordinator Jesse Minter said, we are going to sit with 2 high safeties. We're going to put a cap on Justin Fields making big plays. Take the underneath stuff because we don't think he'll do it. And he did it. All afternoon he did it. And he's done it all season against the blitz. That's the second lowest average depth of target of eligible quarterbacks in the NFL in that stat. Only Josh Allen lower. He also has a 21.4% pressure to sack ratio against the blitz. That's still a little bit high for my liking, right? This isn't perfect. 2.67 second time to throw with that low of an average depth of target. That isn't perfect. You're not just getting it out of your hands quickly. And that's okay because Fields is athletic enough to survive muddy pockets, to hunt a big play a little bit, but he's willing to settle for those checkdowns. And that is real noticeable growth in his game compared to the player he was before he got to Pittsburgh. And granted, before he got to Pittsburgh for a very late round draft pick, right? It's not like the Steelers gave up a lot to get this guy because Chicago was done with him. We're seeing something very different now. And it's a tangible feeling of, I've been down on this offense the past 2 weeks because it felt better, right? It looked more professional, but then you're still not turning it into touchdowns. And there were some penalties that took away explosive plays, but you can't live on 1 or 2 explosive plays to be functional. On Sunday in week 3, it was realized, right? This marriage between Arthur Smith and Justin Fields was realized. And for the first time since probably early 2020, when the Steelers were starting like 11-0, and before everything fell apart that year, I was like very excited for the Steelers offense to come out onto the field in the second half against the Chargers. I felt like a good thing was going to happen. Now, there have been exciting times of, let's see what Kenny Pickett is, right? Exciting times in terms of, we have a new toy. Let's see what this looks like. This was exciting because it started to feel like something good was going to happen. And granted, as soon as I said that and wrote that down in my notes that I take on these games, the next play was Fields' interception. So the rug can get pulled out pretty quick with this, but I've been negative. I've been apprehensive to like give in to Arthur Smith and this offense. And I still am going to withhold my enthusiasm, my full enthusiasm, until we prove it against better teams, healthier teams. But that was an exciting performance. A really exciting performance. And it's exciting because he did it in a way that he's never done it before in the NFL. I said in the offseason, I said early in the season, that he couldn't do these things, that Fields couldn't reliably string together these completions for a functional offense, because that's never what he's done. He's been boom or bust. He did it on Sunday. And that's really, really exciting for what this team can be going forward. Fields didn't miss a throw in the first half. He just didn't miss a throw. His 2 incompletions were balls that hit Pickens and Freiermuth in the hands on crucial downs. And if Freiermuth had held on to that one, Steelers would have scored even more points in the first half because Boswell wouldn't have needed to try a 62-yard field goal that should have been 63, but they moved the holdup because kicking a 60-plus yarder in that stadium is absurd and has never happened before. Operating within structure, again, is something Justin Fields has never done, and it's why I was nervous about the marriage between him and Arthur Smith. On throws of under 2.5 seconds this year, Fields is number 2 in the NFL in yards per attempt, only behind Josh Allen. He's 5th in completion percentage at 82.4, 28 of 34, with 2 drops, mind you. He's thrown for 266 yards, 2 touchdowns, and the interception on those dropbacks that last under 2.5 seconds before he gets the ball out. 38.4% of his dropbacks have been under 2.5 seconds. He was last year at 32.3%, which was 69th of 70 quarterbacks in the league. He's currently 30 of 35. That's not great. He still needs to live in that zone more, get more comfortable trusting his eyes, letting it rip. Something I am a critic of Tony Romo. I have not enjoyed listening to Tony Romo broadcasts for years. I thought Romo was pretty good on the game. And I thought he was good on Justin Fields specifically because he was seeing what Fields saw and applauding him for trusting his eyes and ripping it. And I thought that meant something. A former quarterback like Tony Romo, even if I don't love him as a broadcaster, to me that meant something, that he's seeing real growth. Romo was really enthusiastic about Fields. He was going farther than I'm willing to, saying that that was like his breakout performance. I'm not willing to fully say that yet, right? I think it was his best performance we've seen as a Steeler. There are reasons for that. I'm not willing to say he is your long-term answer at quarterback. You can stop looking. Sign him to an extension. I'm not there yet, but I trust now that he can run a very functional offense and that this marriage between him and Arthur Smith can work. And this is a trend we're seeing in the NFL through the first 3 weeks of the season. Coaching matters. Coaching matters a whole hell of a lot. Matt LaFleur is 2-0 with Malik Willis at quarterback. People saw what Malik Willis looked like in Tennessee. He fell. He was maybe going to be the Steelers pick when they took Kenny Pickett. Fell to the 4th round because he had some traits, but a lot of it was just completely unrealized. And then he was unplayable in Tennessee to the point where he was benched mid-drive in the preseason by Mike Vrabel and then traded for a 7th-round pick to Green Bay. Jordan Love goes down. Matt LaFleur's 2-0 with Malik Willis. Kevin O'Connell, he's 3-0 with Sam Darnold. Darnold just went 17 of 28 for 181 yards and 4 touchdowns in a 34-7 win over the Houston Texans. The Houston Texans that won a playoff game last year with C.J. Stroud. They beat the Browns in the playoffs. The Houston Texans that traded for Stephon Diggs and added pieces this offseason because they view themselves as a Super Bowl contender, added Joe Mixon, added to that defense. And Mike Tomlin is 3-0 with Justin Fields. Fields is in a substantially better situation than he was in Chicago. I haven't loved how things have been handled, but this is a win for the Steelers' organizational stability, the infrastructure that the Rooney family fetishizes so much of 3 coaches since 1969. This is a win for that because Fields showed up in a stable organization and now he's starting to blossom. He seems more confident in interviews. He's saying he's more confident. He is telling anyone that will listen he's more confident. His mind is quieter out on the football field. That comes with reps, right? Because I think he got 36 NFL starts over his first 3 years in Chicago. But it also comes with being somewhere where you trust it's not a shit show around you, right? You trust your head coach is going to put you in a good situation. You trust that your defense isn't going to let you down. You trust, for the most part, the offensive line in front of you. I'm still not ready to say Fields is the long-term answer. We haven't seen enough to say that. But man, is he a drastically different player than he was in Chicago. And maybe I was wrong. And Pittsburgh is a good place to develop a quarterback. They just needed one. Maybe they just needed one who had better traits than Kenny Pickett. Because athletically, that was never going to work in the NFL. Anywhere, in any situation. Maybe Tomlin knows what he's doing, developing a quarterback. Maybe Pittsburgh is a good place for Fields to become a franchise guy, or the next guy that the Steelers draft or trade for or sign to become that after him, after Fields is the bridge. Except for the fact that Tomlin wasn't going to start the guy and still may not say that he's the starter even after a 3-0 start because Russell Wilson has pole position. Except for that little part. The Steelers are in a good spot. The Steelers are in an objectively good spot at 3-0. This offense is better. It still has problems, though. The Steelers are 30th, and I hinted at some of these problems when I was talking about Fields. The Steelers are 30th in the NFL in rushing success rate. That's not good. I'm not sure if you know this. There are 32 teams in the NFL. Only 2 are worse than the Steelers with Najee Harris, with an offensive line that they've spent 3 top 2 picks, top first and second round picks on in the last 2 drafts, and have spent on James Daniel and Isaac Seumalo. And some of those guys aren't out there because they're not healthy. But this offensive line is bad in the run game. This run game is bad. Fields is 32nd of 33 quarterbacks with a 3.5 yards per attempt on dropbacks with play action. This is a remarkably bad running game and remarkably bad play action passing offense. There is clearly no second receiver on this offense. Cordero Patterson, who's a running back now, even though he wears the number 84, had to play that role because he's just a more functional blocker and he's something of a playmaker, right? He was effective yesterday. This is not a rip on Cordero Patterson moment because I think he's a handy player in the NFL. He's not a wide receiver too, right? Calvin Austin was good in the slot. We saw the dynamic speed. We saw big plays from Calvin Austin finally. That's great. He's not like a long-term answer at wide receiver too because he's a slot player. He's super undersized. Roman Wilson, your 3rd-round pick, was healthy, but was a healthy scratch despite desperately needing help at wide receiver too because Mike Tomlin is stubborn with these young guys. He does not trust them. That's always going to be the case. He's good at developing them at wide receiver, but Roman Wilson's didn't get a nod and may still not get one, even though they desperately need another weapon on the outside. But even despite those flaws, even despite Seumalo being out, Troy Fautanu on the IR out for the rest of the regular season, and we'll get to that as well. Dan Moore Jr. and Broderick Jones not being good. at the offensive tackle spots. Arthur Smith has been good. And on Sunday, he started to really gain my trust as a play caller. I was frustrated the first 2 weeks because they had the handcuffs on Justin Fields. They did not trust him to make plays, and they did enough to win those games. And okay, let's applaud them for that. The coach, them being the coaching staff, right? Arthur Smith, Mike Tomlin. They knew what it took to beat Atlanta. They knew what it took to beat Denver, and they did that. That's all they asked their young quarterback to do. In a way, you should be applauded for that, but I'm not going to go overboard and say you're an offensive genius when you're not even scoring 20 points a game. And they still aren't. They scored 20 points against the Chargers. But it seems like there's an adult on the sideline. There's a professional offensive play caller. And I mean that about the offensive side of the ball. It seemed like there was an adult in that game. The traditional Arthur Smith under center, run game, outside zone, play action, right? We know the principles of this. It's proliferated all across the league. It's the Mike Shanahan stuff. It's the Kyle Shanahan stuff. It's the Sean McVay stuff. It's not exactly like that, but it's zone run, play action off of it, throws over the middle of the field. Those are the tenets. That does not work when you can't run the ball. And the Steelers couldn't run the ball. Najee Harris isn't really fit in that run game, that type of run game, that outside run game. He's not getting any traction on those runs. The offensive line without Sayamalu, without Fautanu, not getting much push. The play action is not working with Justin Fields. He's never been an excellent play action quarterback. He's never been really an under center play action quarterback. He's never been somebody who trusts to almost rip it blindly over the middle of the field. And that's what Ryan Tannehill was so great at with Arthur Smith in Tennessee when Matt LaFleur became the head coach of the Green Bay Packers. This has been talked about and reported. Aaron Rodgers, the first thing he did was he watched Ryan Tannehill tape because that offense is similar. And Tannehill is one of the best in the NFL at just ripping it blind over the middle of the field and trusting his receiver is going to be there. And a lot of guys really respect Tannehill because of that. Justin Fields is not that guy. He's not going to be that type of play action passer. And Arthur Smith, to his credit, is not being stubborn about this. Okay, Justin Fields is not that guy. I have to adjust then. Fields isn't going to change his play style fundamentally in the middle of this game or even within this season. So let me do something that works for him. Under center run, play action not working. So for the first time in a really long time, the Steelers made an interesting and impactful halftime offensive adjustment because they have an adult calling the plays. Smith put Fields in the shotgun more, used more spread concepts. This is stuff that Fields is comfortable with. More receivers out there. We don't have a lot of good receivers. Okay, some of them are tight ends. Some of them are running backs, but guys are spread out. And Fields is in the shotgun, so he can see things, right? He's willing now to trust his eyes if he sees it, but it doesn't seem like he's very comfortable turning his back to the defense. And the play action numbers reflect that. So, okay. And Romo was really good on this too. They noticeably, near the end of the first half, and especially after halftime, went to this spread look, the shotgun look, got the ball out of Fields' hands quicker, and started to get traction. And then, all of a sudden, the Steelers gained 255 yards in the second half and slammed the door shut on this game. They also held the Chargers to -5 yards in the second half because that defense is ridiculous, and I will get to how good that defense is, but the offense is the hot topic. The offense is more interesting because it's more in flux. We know what that defense is, and it's damn good. I criticized Arthur Smith for not doing his stuff or Fields' stuff in week 1 and week 2. It was not either of their bread and butter. It wasn't the over the middle of the field throws that Smith likes to do. It wasn't quarterback run game and deep throws that Fields is comfortable with, right? It was neither of that. It seems like those two are figuring it out. They're figuring out what an Arthur Smith, Justin Fields offense together looks like. They needed some time to do that. This offense was designed for Russell Wilson, for an aging Russell Wilson. So let's figure out what Fields does. And Smith is doing that. That's why he's gaining so much of my trust. You're seeing an evolution of play calling. It is not rigid. It is fit to the strengths of the players. Fields can make the over-the-middle throws when he can see it. So put him in shotgun. Fields ripped a great throw over the middle to Calvin Austin on the touchdown catch and run. That stuff Smith typically gets out of the play action game because that sucks linebackers in. That sucks safeties in. It manipulates the defense, right? But he adjusted to fit Fields because that's not working. Fields turning his back is not working. Okay, he'll throw it if he can see it, put him in shotgun, and let's manipulate the defense with the other routes. On that play, Cordero Patterson came across the formation in motion. That draws attention. Pat Freiermuth sat down right in the middle on a short curl route, right? Just a little stick pattern right in the middle of the defense. That brought a linebacker in. George Pickens ran a short out. That pulled the corners that way. That held the safety that way. Because those are gravitational forces on this offense. And you're manipulating a defense in a similar way to what play action does. But you're tailoring it to your quarterback. And that brought the Freiermuth route, especially underneath, brought the opposite side safety down because Fields was throwing that all day, and Fields ripped it into that window behind him, and it gave Austin room to run. That is stuff, that is a staple of the Arthur Smith offense. Those deep crossers, that catch and run, a lot of yak, that is what Arthur Smith does. That is his stuff. But out of a spread concept from shotgun, that's what Justin Fields does. They're starting to figure this out, and that's why I'm getting excited about it. Not just that Fields completed like 78% of his passes or, even his completion percentage over expectation, because there were a lot of short throws in there. Like, it's not just that. It's that this is working together, and I'm starting to trust the offensive coaching staff in a way that I haven't, certainly since I've been, talking about football and writing about football as a job. And even before that, right? Like, I did not trust what Randy Fichtner was drawing up. I did not trust what Matt Canada was doing because it was so rigid, regardless of the personnel out there. Arthur Smith is doing interesting things that are getting me really excited about what this can look like with a longer runway. And that's why Tomlin needs to just say, Justin Fields is our starter. I don't care if Russell Wilson comes back healthy. Russell Wilson signed here to be the starting quarterback. Sorry, man, things changed. You got hurt. We have no financial investment in you. That's the reality in the NFL. Get on board or get out of town. Because there's something here with Justin Fields. So let's invest in that. Let's see what that can look like as we continue to grow. And I now believe that Arthur Smith might be the right guy to do that on this coaching staff. And I wasn't so sure about that even 2 weeks ago, even a month ago. So there are reasons that I was pessimistic after week 1. I was pessimistic after week 2. And I'm trying not to get over my skis with this team because the schedule's easy in the front end of the season. But they're doing the thing they need to do. They're making hay. So at some point, the enthusiasm is just going to get pulled out of me. And we're getting closer. We're getting a lot closer with this team. And that's exciting because I want to come on here every Monday and tell you that this team can win a playoff game and that this team is going to go to the playoffs and that Justin Fields is the quarterback of the future. I want to be able to say those things. I want to be an optimistic person, but I'm just going to tell you what I see. I did not see that. I did not see signs of that in week 1 and week 2. I'm starting to see glimpses, but I'm not going to freak out. Justin Herbert was hurt. Justin Herbert left the game. Joey Bosa went out with an injury. Joe Alt went out with an injury. Rashawn Slater eventually went out with an injury. The Chargers aren't a juggernaut in the AFC. Kirk Cousins was a statue in week 1. Bo Nix was a rookie that was overwhelmed. I'm not going to get over my skis about it, but there are good signs, especially if things start to turn around for the health of this team. But one guy that we know the Steelers aren't going to get back healthy is Troy Fautanu, because the Steelers keep mishandling first-round picks, and that's another reason I can't get fully in on what's going on with this team. But before we get to that, it's the second day of fall now? Yesterday, we've had a football Sunday on the first day of fall, I believe. It's such a good time of year. It's a great time of year. Football is back. It's football season. It's the fall season now. It's been football season. It'll keep being football season into the winter. Football season is the best season. And now you can win up to 1,000 times your money just by choosing higher or lower on your favorite player's stats, touchdowns, passing yards, rushing yards. And you can do it with Underdog Fantasy. I've signed up for Underdog Fantasy since we started doing this partnership, and it makes Sundays that much more fun, right? You have your fantasy team that you're watching, but what if you don't like those matchups? What if a guy's on bye? Now you can have even another level of investment on these Sundays because we're sitting on the couch, we're watching these games. Why not have something to root for? And you can get that with Underdog Fantasy. Making picks on Underdog is straightforward, and signing up is even easier. Just head over to Underdog's simple-to-use mobile app or UnderdogFantasy.com. Sign up with promo code STILLCURTAIN. That's STILLCURTAIN. And Underdog will give you a free pick to use on your first cash pick'em entry, plus up to $1,000 in bonus cash when you deposit. That's Underdog Fantasy, promo code STILLCURTAIN, to claim your new customer special of a free pick and your deposit offer. Must be 18 plus, 21 plus, Massachusetts and Arizona, 19 plus in Alabama and Nebraska, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply, void in Colorado. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org. Arizona, 1-800-NEXT-STEP, 1-800-639-8783, or text NEXT-STEP to 53342. New York, call the 24/7 HOPE line at 1-8778-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. And now I catch my breath for a second, because we have to talk about Troy Fautanu. The Steelers' first-round pick at right tackle was placed on IR after tweaking his knee injury, and now word is he's out for the regular season. He would maybe be eligible and able and healthy enough to return if the Steelers make the playoffs. And that is still an if. The Steelers are 3-0. The Steelers are first place in the AFC North. That is still an if. And yes, it's a knee injury. I think it's a dislocated kneecap and some ligament damage. And in a lot of ways, that's a freak thing, right? Offensive line, it's a difficult position to play. Body's falling all over the place. You hurt your knee in preseason. You re-aggravate it in practice. Okay, like that stuff happens. But the Steelers have a trend of mismanaging and mishandling their first-round picks. And I've talked about it a lot. We've all talked about it a lot with regards to Broderick Jones. But now it's the same deal with Troy Fautanu, right? Jones is now forced to play right tackle because Jones is forced to play right tackle now. Not just because of the Fautanu injury, but because, in my mind, they rushed Fautanu back because they didn't trust Jones to play right tackle before in week 1. And then wanted to do a rotation in week 2 because they didn't trust Broderick Jones to play right tackle. So they forced Troy Fautanu back quickly. And I don't, forced may not be the right word, but they brought him back quickly. Possibly too quickly. If it's the same injury, re-aggravated, tweaked, as they originally said, and now he's out for the year. That's not great handling of a guy who you invested a first-round pick in. That is meaningful. The Steelers don't seem to understand how meaningful a first-round pick is. It's not just that this is a guy with pedigree, so you have to play him. I'm all for playing your best guys. And if Broderick Jones isn't one of them, okay, I can start to rationalize that. But last year you protect Broderick Jones so much that you don't play him until week 11. And this year you make him battle with Dan Moore Jr. to be the starting left tackle and don't give him a huge shot to win that because he's splitting time between left and right tackle. But Fautanu, yes, he's a more NFL-ready prospect coming out of Washington. He was a 4-year starter practically at Washington. Tons of experience, more than Broderick Jones. Not as raw of a prospect. But you're moving him from left tackle to right. And after he suffers a preseason injury, you name him your week 1 starter at right tackle. It doesn't, the logic doesn't square there. Are you protective of first-round picks or are you not? You were overly protective with one, probably. Broderick Jones not playing him early last season. And then you're not protective enough of the one the next year. And this is not just with these two guys where they're forcing Jones to learn 2 positions at the same time. And we've talked about it so much. And now he has to play on the right side again for the whole year, as long as he's healthy. But you draft back-to-back first-round tackles, and you have a problem, a weakness, at both tackle spots. And it's week 3. That's incredible, mismanagement, regardless of how those players are performing, right? Because one of the weaknesses is that Broderick Jones is just not playing well. And maybe he's just not a good player. But he's not playing his position. And he never got enough reps at his position to potentially win that battle. Dan Moore Jr. is a weakness because he's just not a good player. And he got bullied by Khalil Mack in week 3. He was good through the first 2 weeks, went up against a A-plus pass rusher, and Khalil Mack ate his lunch money, which is what we expected. It's unfathomable that you have a weakness at both offensive tackle spots after you drafted that position in back-to-back drafts. The last 4 first-round picks for the Steelers, Najee Harris, Kenny Pickett, Broderick Jones, Troy Fautanu. Najee Harris, they declined his 5th-year option. He's a replacement level running back, maybe slightly above. He's a good player. He's had 1,000 yards seasons. A lot of backs with the volume he gets could have a 1,000-yard season. Not worthy of a first-round pick. And the indication of that is that they didn't pick up his 5th-year option. Kenny Pickett, just a flat-out bust. Couldn't play. They needed a quarterback desperately. I still understand it. And I love the fact that they recognized he was not an NFL starting quarterback, and they were willing to admit their mistake and move on. And it's a little bit easier because it's Omar Khan admitting Kevin Colbert's mistake, but still the logic still stands. They moved on. They should be applauded for that. Shouldn't be applauded for the pick because he's not an NFL quarterback. Broderick Jones, looking like a bust, playing out of position, and only playing because of an injury. Because if Troy Fautanu was healthy, Broderick Jones, in his own words, shouldn't be playing. He said if he's not starting, he shouldn't be playing after the Denver game when he came in a rotation and played terribly. Now he played better against the Chargers as the starter, as you'd expect, not rotating in, but didn't play well. And then Troy Fautanu, out for the year now because they weren't patient enough after his preseason injury, because they don't trust Dan Moore Jr. to move over to right tackle. He's told them that he can't do it. So they're forcing Broderick Jones to do it. He's playing poorly, and they have to rush back their first round pick. And now he's out for the year. And not only do you have a problem at those positions this year, you could argue that offensive tackle is going to be one of the team's biggest weaknesses heading into next year, because Dan Moore Jr., who is somehow their best healthy tackle at the moment, will be a free agent. It's remarkable how poorly they've handled high draft picks. And hitting on stars in the draft is the way you're going to go from a middling 9-8 team, other than a quarterback move, right? Is the way. That's the only way you're going to go from this middling 9-8 team to a contender. You're going to have to hit on these talented players. And that's not only in the first round, right? Because Zach Frazier looks fantastic at center. He's helping Fields call out protections. He's rock solid in pass protection, really good in the run game, probably their best run blocker right now. Well, James Daniels has been fantastic too. This zone system fits him really well. They're going to have to pay him a lot of money this offseason, or he's going to go somewhere else, because he's playing incredibly well. And Seumalo, I expect to play well too when he comes back. But you got to get something out of first round picks, or else you're going to be stuck in this zone. Even if you do have a quarterback, if you continue to miss on first round picks, it's hard to continue winning at a high level. They're a valuable commodity. They're one of the best paths to talent acquisition. So you got to do something with the talent that you acquire. You got to help it blossom. And the Steelers just have not done that for a long time. You could argue since they drafted TJ Watt. It's been bad in the first round, and that's a huge problem. And we're seeing it again with the Troy Fautanu injury, because they have some responsibility in that for bringing him back, and then it's the same injury. If it was a different injury, you brought him back and it's a different injury, okay, maybe that's a different story, but that's a big problem and a really big loss for this offense, because, like I said, the run game has been a huge problem through the first 3 weeks of the season. With all of that said, I had to be a downer at some point. You knew I was going to be a downer at some point in this episode. It wasn't going to be all optimistic. That was the downer. Now here's some more optimism as we look ahead at the Steelers' schedule. First, as I get a little drink of water there. Solo show, not much room to do that other than just taking a hard stop. Anyways, that brings us to the question of, when's the first loss going to come? Because there's a path to a pretty nice win streak here for the Pittsburgh Steelers, for the 3-0 Pittsburgh Steelers that looked very good against the Chargers, a team that I expected was going to give them problems. I thought the Steelers were going to start the season like 2-2, with splitting between Atlanta and Denver and splitting between the Chargers and the Colts. Now they're heading to Indianapolis against a Colts team that just beat the Bears, but is really struggling on run defense, does not have DeForest Buckner. So maybe the run game is actually going to start to go for the Steelers against Indianapolis. And Anthony Richardson has not looked good. He's the Broderick Jones of quarterbacks in that he's incredibly, incredibly raw coming out. And Shane Steichen and that coaching staff has done a better job trying to maximize his talents, his abilities, but he's incredibly raw, and that's a problem for the Colts offense. And against the Steelers defense, they're gonna have some problems. It's nerve-wracking for me because the Steelers historically have these spots on the road where they should win a game and it's a letdown. This roster's good. This defense is really good. And that's giving me faith that if you made me predict now, I'd say the Steelers are going to get to 4-0. And let's look at this defense through 3 games. 3 straight games to start the season allowing 10 or fewer points. That has happened one other time in Steelers history because, of course, this is the Steelers. In 1973, this defense is doing something that the 70s Steelers defense did. And again, I will caveat it. It was against a statue Kirk Cousins when the Falcons didn't know what that offense was going to look like because he couldn't move. It was against an overwhelmed Bo Nix. It was against Justin Herbert on a sprained ankle. But I'll also say there's not a ton of great quarterbacks in the NFL. It's not like the Steelers are going to be facing juggernauts every week. This defense is good enough to beat teams like they've played and to beat even better teams than that. So far through 3 games, they're first in EPA per play. That's expected points added. 6th in success rate allowed. 3rd in drop back EPA. So quarterbacks are not having success. 8th in drop back success rate. 1st in rushing EPA, which has been a problem when Steelers defenses have looked like they should be good in the past. Sometimes they have trouble stopping the run. That's not the case for this defense because Cam Hayward has looked incredible on the defensive line. That extension looks like a steal. Even though he's 35 years old, he has to stay healthy. There are outs in that contract if he doesn't. But he looks like an all-pro. He's playing at his all-pro level. He is moving the line of scrimmage significantly. And J.K. Dobbins came into that game, the Chargers running back, J.K. Dobbins, former Raven, came into that game averaging almost 10 yards a carry, and he averaged 2.9 because the Steelers' run defense is that legit. Keanu Benton is really good up front. Larry Ogunjobi is like an above replacement level interior defensive end. That's valuable, right? They have a lot of good players on that defensive line. And then you look at the edge. And they might have 3 really good outside linebackers. Alex Highsmith has had 10 sack seasons. Alex Highsmith has been a very productive player. TJ Watt might be the best in the league, right? Nick Herbig, if he gets more opportunities, he's going to be a star. And I tweeted during the preseason that I thought if Nick Herbig started the entire year, he could get like 15 sacks. That's how I'm irresponsible with my optimism about Nick Herbig because I think he is incredible. He is so quick off the ball. He just gets to the quarterback so fast. One of his 2 sacks came in just 2.7 seconds. If you're a quarterback, you're supposed to be safe if you have the ball for that time. And with Herbig on that side, you're not. And Herbig's going to get one-on-ones. Obviously, Highsmith left with a groin injury. It's unclear how much time he'll miss, if he'll miss time. But opposite TJ Watt, Herbig is going to get one-on-ones. He needs to play more, whether Highsmith is healthy or not. But if Highsmith's out, Herbig is going to be a legitimately dominant force opposite TJ Watt. In 19 snaps against LA, 3 pressures, 2 sacks, 3 run game stops. And that came with only 8 pass rush snaps. And one of those sacks was a strip sack against Rashawn Slater, one of the best left tackles in the entire NFL. That's what Herbig did in such a small sample size in week 3. And with players like that on this defense, they're going to be really good. They'll continue to be really good. I have questions at linebacker. I didn't love how Patrick Queen played yesterday. I thought he was overrunning things in the run game a noticeable amount. I thought he was overcommitting against play action and getting taken advantage of in the passing game. I think that will continue. I don't think Patrick Queen is a great middle linebacker. I didn't think that when they paid him. But I do think he brings stability. And he brings a level of trust that keeps Minkah Fitzpatrick over the top, which helps your secondary in a really, really meaningful way. And I think this is, if not the best defense in the NFL, I'm not sure what other unit it would be. It's top 3, maybe top 2, and probably not 2. It's probably the best defense in the NFL. And I think if they stay healthy, it'll continue to be that way. And I talked about the offensive adjustments that they made, right? Defensively, they made interesting adjustments too, right? There was this matchup of Joe Alt against TJ Watt because he pretty much shut out Max Crosby when those two went head to head. And Alt has been really good. First round pick out of Notre Dame, flipped from left tackle to right, did it seamlessly. If they left Joe Alt one-on-one with TJ Watt, Watt beat him every time it happened. He beat him bad. So they couldn't do that. They had to start chipping like crazy with tight ends. And it worked in the first half. Then in the second half, the Steelers got even more pressure. And I think the play that ultimately knocked Herbert out of the game was when they blitzed Landon Roberts, who, and this is another thing that Romo pointed out that he was really good on. Landon Roberts was responsible for the tight end that was going to chip TJ Watt. They knew he was going to chip TJ Watt, so he couldn't get out into his route in time. So they just blitzed Roberts, and he was a free rusher up the middle. And they sacked Herbert. It's a smart defense. It's a versatile defense. And it's the most expensive defense in the NFL, so it should be this good, but it so far through 3 games, it's worth the money. And you start to get excited about how many wins they can stack up, because this is all about stacking wins before the gauntlet in the second half of the season. So it's not even so much a game of how long will this win streak go, right? Because there are some spots that maybe they could lose. But it's how many wins can you stack before you play Baltimore in week 11, because that's when it starts. So Indy next week. I like the Steelers' chances. Dallas at home, Sunday Night Football in week 5. Dallas hasn't looked very good. That's not a physical football team. That's not a physical defense. They're getting pushed around. Dak Prescott's a good quarterback. He'll be the best quarterback they've faced so far. So that'll be a test for this defense. And in a lot of ways, a test for the offense as well, going against Micah Parsons. They should be able to run the ball the next 2 weeks. They should win those 2 games. Then it's a trip to Vegas, which feels like a classic Mike Tomlin loss, right? But they're the better team in that one. They should beat Antonio Pierce's Raiders. And then the spot that you'll really learn something is Sunday Night Football again at home against the New York Jets in week 7. Because Aaron Rodgers looks like Aaron Rodgers. And that New York pass rush is legit. That is a good Jets team that dismantled the Patriots. They look bad in week 1 on primetime against the 49ers, and that image is probably still in a lot of people's heads, but the Jets are a good team. That'll be the biggest test. That's likely where the first loss, I would say, if you made me bet, I would bet the first loss comes in week 7. But that's potentially a 6-0 start. And then after that, it's the New York Giants at home on Monday Night Football. That should be another win. So by my count, you're at like 7 before the bye. After that, a trip to Washington in week 10. That should be another win. There's a path. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I don't even know if I believe that it's very likely. But there is a path from what the Steelers have shown on both sides of the ball through the first weeks of the season to get to 8-1 before you host Baltimore on November 17th in week 11. And that feels really scary to say, because it feels like getting way too optimistic about this thing, but that's how you have to treat the first half of this season. That's how important it is, because after that Baltimore game, it's Baltimore at Cleveland, at Cincy versus Cleveland, at Philly, at Baltimore, home to KC, home to Cincinnati. You got to get 7 or 8. You have to get 7 or 8 before week 11. With this start, if you want to be in like the playoff mix, not just maybe we're going to make the playoffs, but okay, we're not the 7 seed this time. You got to get to like 7 or 8 wins by week 11, before week 11. And it's starting to seem like there might be a path. And I never, ever, 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 ever thought that would be the case heading into it. I will say I don't expect that to happen. I would bet they go in with 6 wins through the first 9 games, start 6-3. I don't think, I'm just hesitant to buy all the way in. But there's a path. And I was optimistic today. So that should say a lot, because I was not feeling good after a 2-0 start. I'm feeling a hell of a lot better after 3-0. And we'll see how I'm feeling next week after the Steelers play the Indianapolis Colts in Indianapolis. Till then, have a great week and go Steelers.